Hello and welcome to Family Foundation Friday on the Authority of Love. If you're joining us on the broadcast, WJMM 99.1 FM, Central Kentucky's Life Radio, thank you for that, and thanks for sharing that information. You may have a video or a podcast you got from one of our websites. Thank you for that as well. Please continue to share it to help spread these messages and get as many people on board as we can. I'm joined today, I'm your host, Greg Williams, joined as always by our co-host, David Walls from the Family Foundation. David, thanks for joining us, brother.
Always good to be with you, Greg.
Yes, it is, and I appreciate you doing it as always. Now, I know you're going to want to know if I've done anything yet, but I haven't gotten any pushback yet from my declaration for the WNBA, which is the Why Not Basketball Association, I think.
That's right. I hope you've been training, probably 2 days to get ready for the draft. But apparently, they are still working diligently at the WNBA to figure out what the W stands for. And so we'll see maybe next week if they figured it out.
I think we've got a good one there. Why Not Basketball Association? Why not anybody? It could be. So, we're having a little fun with that, but it is a serious matter in our culture for sure. David, also, I know you guys had an op-ed that got out this week and is going further.
Yeah. Kentucky Today we're very thankful, published a new op-ed for us on the new federal tax credit program that, again, is going into effect next year. And so our op-ed is specifically about how and why Christian education in Kentucky should take advantage of this.
Yes.
It's a stewardship issue. As individuals, we're going to have the opportunity to steward essentially our tax liability towards Christian education. And I think there's a stewardship issue related to that, us individually. But from an opportunity standpoint, such an opportunity for Christian education to put in the reach of more Kentucky families that desire it, a Christian education. So come in, folks. Justin Warner, our team, co-wrote that with me. Encourage folks to go look at that. But I know we got a lot of other news we want to break down as well.
And as a matter of fact, you also, I think you shared that the Courier-Journal has at least picked up on that and may also put it out there. You can find out more at the Family Foundation, KentuckyFamily.org. But please share that information. We need to get the word out on that. So I'm glad that you all got to do that. I know it'll be a great article.
More to come on that front as we want to educate and equip folks on that. But it's a good starter piece for folks.
We'll probably do more than one show explaining a lot more than that as we get closer or further on down the line and closer to 27. Because it is extremely important. David, we hit on this a little bit last week, the fact that the Trump administration, and I've said this many times, there are several things that I don't like what he's doing, especially with not standing up for abortion and illegal abortion in certain states. But this was a good thing where they took, they prohibited the Medicaid dollars from going to abortion. Can you give us an update on that?
Well, we're talking about the transgender interventions on children.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thank you for correcting me.
No. Well, that's the most recent news on that front. And as we talked about last week, essentially the Trump administration and making sure that's going to be shut down and no longer happening. We also mentioned, Kentucky was a little ahead of the curve on this and passed state legislation in 25 on this. But the other kind of big piece of news that we didn't get a chance to mention that I just wanted to highlight was the fact there was actually a huge report from the Health and Human Services, I would say a bombshell report that they put out exposing the fraud that was going on in this front. And the report is titled, "Wolves in White Coats, How Doctors and Hospitals Pushed and Profited from the Fraud of Gender Medicine." And so this report documents nearly $50 million in potential fraud related to puberty-blocking drugs given to minors. And it's just, it's kind of mind-boggling, but at the same time, we knew exactly that this was what was going on. And so a lot of this had to do with Medicaid being used this way, even private insurance being defrauded. And so this whole industry was set up, and what they were doing was, prescribing these evil, I would say, drug regimes and interventions on children, and then coding that under codes through insurance
that would just
to kind of hide what they were doing.
Right.
And so as this report makes clear, this was not some kind of accidental thing. This was a specific, targeted, planned thing that was done to prey upon minors and then to defraud our own government and to defraud private insurance companies.
Parents.
Absolutely, all down the line. And so we want to do a further deep dive this. I still want to know how much of this fraud was happening in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I mean, I think back and remember to all the different entities and organizations that were involved in pushing this, and not just pushing it, but were opposing efforts of the General Assembly and that we were supporting to pass laws to protect. I mean, there needs to be accountability to this, because the only way that we ensure these kinds of massive fraud regimes that ultimately hurt people don't happen again is to bring the proper accountability to that. So,
and in particular, David, to hurt children.
Yes.
If adults want to do that, that's up to them. I certainly wouldn't like to see it because it's destructive and hurting them as well.
When I would argue our tax dollars shouldn't pay for
any of that. No, our tax dollars, no way. And I did have it in my notes right here. It was gender transition that the Trump administration said no Medicaid funds. So thanks for clarifying that. We have a precedent for this, though, right? Because Texas Hospital, major Texas Hospital.
Children's and the Cleveland Clinic have already been caught up in this and literally had, in the case of the Texas Children's Hospital, one of the largest healthcare fraud settlements in the history of pediatric medicine, where they are now going to be essentially have multi-million-dollar settlements to help pay for detransitioning, to actually help these kids that they had a part in pushing towards these harmful medical interventions, so-called medical interventions.
And Texas Children's Hospital is maybe one, if not the largest children's hospital in the country. And they basically, I think their settlement was $10 million, and Cleveland Clinic had an undisclosed, or I don't know it, but then also said they would pay $2 million for detransitioners, which is just a tip of the iceberg. Really is. In a related situation, David, we've got, it's interesting, I think there's 29 states, and Kentucky is one of the leading states that has now filed a lawsuit along these lines, right?
Yeah, talking about protecting kids, the need to protect kids online and from the harms of addictive social media and predatory social media companies and practices. And so the big news just from this week is our own Attorney General here in Kentucky, Russell Coleman, is leading a coalition of 29 state attorneys general taking Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, to court for harming kids in multiple ways. And so it's an interesting case. Like I said, there's 29 states involved, but specifically Kentucky, and then California, Colorado, and New Jersey are the ones actually arguing this case in court, and it's in federal court, I believe, in California. But this has the potential to be the largest consumer protection lawsuit in American history. And what they're arguing, and I believe they will be able to show, is that Meta was specifically targeting kids, addicting kids to their platforms, trying to keep them on their platforms as long as possible. They knew this, and then they were deceiving parents, the media, all of us, that they knew that these platforms were addictive and harms kids, but they were still
there was intent
monetizing their data. And then there's also going to be arguments made that they literally, for children under 13, were collecting their data and illegally using it without their parents' consent in violation of federal law. That's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. This is huge. We've talked a lot about this issue, I know, this year, Greg, because we helped support an effort to pass a state law in Kentucky this year to empower parents to be able to have more say and be able to protect their kids and to shut down some of these addictive features for kids. And so the Attorney General, Kentucky Attorney General, his press release made mention to the fact that Meta has repeatedly fought their efforts to try to argue in these cases and keep these cases out of court. I will also say Meta has spent significant resources, state by state, trying to fight state legislatures and keep them from protecting. And that's exactly what happened here in Kentucky. Again, to remind folks, that bill that was authored by our good friend Representative Matt Lockett passed the Kentucky House overwhelmingly, but didn't end up getting taken up in the Kentucky Senate and died this year. It's going to be a continued legislative agenda item that we're going to be pushing for. But just a reminder of how powerful these trillion-dollar companies are, and they need to be held account to ensure that children are protected. And we want to see it done in a way that empowers parents, because we ultimately know government has a role to ensure children are protected, but we want to see parents empowered so that they have the ability, the know-how to ensure that they can keep these kids off their platforms if they desire.
Well, there's two things I'll add to that, David, and that is this. First of all, the two things that connect here is the harm to children, as I mentioned in the transition there, the harm to children in the gender dysphoric issues, as well as in the addictive technology issues and internet issues. And the other thing, the connection there is a scriptural one. The love of money is the root of all evil. If they continue to try to hide this and deceive and spend money to continue to do it, even when they know some of the things they're doing are illegal, that's evil, and it's the money that's driving them. Yep. And I would say this, shame on the Kentucky Senate. I can say this because what I think is they allowed themselves to fall for those lies and those deceptions. And I hope that changes in 2027 General Assembly. We can get something done.
And I think it can. And you know what's also interesting, Greg, again, just to point out, so 29 state attorneys general. This is not red states. Right. This is I mentioned Kentucky and California a part of this.
Colorado and New Jersey.
Colorado and New Jersey, Louisiana and Minnesota, New York and South Carolina. There you go. This is a
purple issue.
I'm encouraged that there's a growing bipartisan red and blue state consensus that we need to ensure that our children are protected. And so kudos to our state attorney general. I know this has been a big heart of his, and a big part of what the attorney general's office has been doing the last couple of years is looking to do everything in its power to make sure kids are protected from these harmful online and addictive platforms. The General Assembly, while again we're disappointed they didn't get that bill done this session, has taken some big steps in previous sessions. And so we're going to continue to advocate this for next session. And I think obviously what's happening here makes it all the more relevant that states continue to lead on this issue. I mean, I keep coming back to, Greg, time and time again, that states are the ones that can take the first step in passing these much needed laws, in looking at the landscape and doing new and creative and necessary things. And as those things start to happen state by state, it builds these momentums that can actually, make an impact across the entire nation. So I want to see Kentucky to continue to play a leading role in that, and we're going to be involved in that.
And there might have been, as I said earlier, there might have been the lies and deceptions that we're falling for, but we know more now. We know more now. Maybe they knew it then, maybe they didn't, but we know more now for sure with what's coming out. And the other thing I would say, David, talking about your momentum, the state's momentum toward overall good laws, generally speaking, for the sake of our culture and our society, is that we hope that these things will move in such a way and not create a fiasco like the abortion death pill has, where we have states that have said no, and yet people are still doing it. So that needs to be remembered as we move forward in these things as well.
Absolutely.
So let's hit, I know we got a couple other things. We'll get to them later. There's a couple of big issues out there, but Family Forum.
Yeah, we are starting to fill up. We've got some really exciting new speakers and other parts of the program that we're going to be announcing very soon. But I hope you'll plan to join us along with our good friend John Stonestreet, who will be our keynote speaker, president of the Colson Center.
Yes. So put that on your calendar and join us. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ. I'm your host, Greg Williams, with co-host David Walls, and you're listening to Family Foundation Friday on the Authority of Love.